He walked in like it was any other Sunday. Coffee in hand, phone buzzing with wedding plans. I smiled, asked if they needed help with seating charts. He didn't look up, just said. No warning, no apology, just a casual. I cleared your account for the wedding. But that sentence hit like a truck on a quiet street. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy enough to knock the air out of me. I stood there holding my own mug, now cold fingers wrapped around ceramic like it might anchor me. The kitchen light flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the counter where I'd baked his favorite banana bread just last week. Still warm when he left. Now everything felt cold. I didn't say anything at first. What do you even say when someone takes 23 years of your life and calls it convenient? That account wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was early mornings before sunrise. Double shifts after spraining my wrist. Birthday cards from neighbors with $5 bills tucked inside. Every time I skipped lunch so I could put gas in the car or buy new shoes for school. All of it gone. Not stolen, not lost, just handed over like spare change. He kept scrolling through his phone, tapping away like he'd just told me the weather. Maybe he thought it wouldn't matter. Maybe he forgot how much it did. Or maybe he never really knew. Because knowing would mean seeing me not just as background noise but as someone who showed up every single day. Rain or shine, sick or tired, happy or heartbroken. I was always there. The silence stretched between us thick and awkward. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. A car passed, slow tires humming against wet pavement. Normal sounds for a normal Sunday. But nothing felt normal anymore. I remembered the day he took his first steps. Wobbly arms reaching forward, eyes wide with wonder. I held my breath, scared he'd fall. But he didn't. He kept going. And I followed. Always one step behind, ready to catch him if he stumbled. Now I wondered if he ever looked back. If he ever noticed the footsteps trailing his own. Or if he just assumed I'd always be there. Steady, quiet, reliable. Like the walls of this house. Easy to lean on until you forget they're holding you up. He finally glanced up, sensing the weight in the room. You okay? He asked, voice flat like he was checking a box. I nodded, because what else was there to do? Say no, I'm not okay. My whole life just got erased for flower arrangements and fancy chairs. Tell him how many nights I stayed awake worrying about bills while he slept soundly down the hall. Remind him that love isn't supposed to come with receipts. Instead I turned to the sink, pretending to rinse a dish that didn't need rinsing. Water ran clear and steady. I watched it swirl down the drain. Just like everything else. He shifted on his feet, uncomfortable now. Look, I didn't want to upset you. It's just easier this way. We don't want drama on our big day. His words landed soft but sharp. Like a knife wrapped in tissue paper. Still cuts, just prettier. I almost laughed. Drama. As if asking for basic respect was some kind of performance. As if wanting to keep what you earned was unreasonable. But I stayed quiet. Because people who take don't usually understand why giving hurts. He left soon after. Mug still half full on the counter. Phone still buzzing with details about cake flavors and color palettes. I watched him go through the window. Back straight, shoulders relaxed. Like he hadn't just rewritten my future without asking. After the door clicked shut, I sat at the table. Empty except for a single napkin folded neatly beside my plate. I traced the creases with my thumb. Thinking how strange it is that people can live under the same roof for decades. Share meals, share holidays, share secrets. And still feel like strangers when it matters most. The account had been mine since before he could tie his shoes. Opened with a birthday check from a great-aunt who smelled like lavender and peppermints. Grown slowly carefully with every bit of extra I could scrimp. Never touched unless absolutely necessary. Saved for emergencies, for possibilities, for peace of mind. Now it was gone. Not because of an emergency. Not because of hardship. But because someone decided their celebration mattered more than my security. I didn't cry. Not then. Tears would come later when the shock wore off. When the numbness gave way to something sharper. For now I just sat. Listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the clock on the wall. The ordinary sounds of a life that suddenly felt borrowed. I thought about calling someone. A friend, a neighbor, anyone. But who do you call when your own blood treats you like an afterthought? And what would you even say? Hey, remember all those years I put in? Turns out they don't count if you're not invited to the party. So I stayed. Alone with my thoughts and the ghost of what I thought we were. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. I watched them shift slowly as the hours passed. Time moving forward even when everything inside me wanted to stop. Eventually I stood. Walked to the bedroom. Pulled out an old shoebox from the back of the closet. Inside were photos, ticket stubs, letters, notes scribbled on napkins. Proof that once upon a time we mattered to each other. I didn't look through them. Just held the box for a moment, feeling its weight in my hands. Then put it back. Some memories are too heavy to carry right now. And that's okay. I went back to the kitchen. Picked up his forgotten mug. Washed it slowly, thoroughly. Placed it back in the cupboard. Closed the door gently. Outside the sky began to darken. Clouds rolling in, promising rain. I stood by the window again. Watching the world prepare for a storm. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself wonder what came next. Not for him. For me. Because even when roots are pulled up, they can find new soil. New sun. New reasons to grow. And maybe that starts today. My breath caught but my hands stayed still. That account held 23 years of savings. Birthday envelopes, holiday checks, every overtime shift. All gone, not stolen, just taken. Like I was never meant to be part of the picture. I stood in the kitchen long after he left. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft creak of floorboards settling. It felt like the walls were holding their breath too. Waiting to see what I would do. I walked to the bedroom slowly. Not because I was tired but because moving fast felt like it might break something. Inside or out. I opened the top drawer of the dresser where I kept important papers. Birth certificate, social security card, old bank statements. I flipped through them, fingers brushing over faded ink and yellowed paper. Each sheet a reminder of a life built quietly, steadily, carefully. There it was. The last statement from the account. Printed weeks ago, before anyone mentioned wedding plans. Before seating charts and cake tastings and color swatches. The number looked back at me, bold and final. Now it was 0. Not because of bad luck or emergency. But because someone decided it was easier to take than to ask. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagging slightly under my weight. Same spot where I'd sat 1,000 times before. Reading bedtime stories, helping with homework, listening to worries about friends and grades and growing up. Now there was no one to listen to me. Outside a bird called sharp and clear. A sound so ordinary it almost hurt. Life going on like nothing happened. Like the ground hadn't just shifted under my feet. I thought about all the things that money had meant. Not fancy cars or vacations. But peace. knowing the lights would stay on. The roof wouldn't leak. If the car broke down there'd be a way to fix it. That safety net was gone. Cut clean without warning. I didn't rage. Didn't throw things or scream into a pillow. Just sat there feeling the weight of absence. Like losing a tooth you didn't know was loose. Suddenly there's a hollow space and everything feels off balance. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from someone asking if I'd seen the new venue photos. Pretty right. I stared at the screen. Smiling faces, flowers, arches, white chairs lined up like soldiers. All paid for with money that used to be mine. I put the phone face down. Not out of anger but because looking at it felt like staring into a room I wasn't invited to enter. I got up, walked to the window. Pulled back the curtain just enough to see the street. Kids rode bikes laughing loud and free. A neighbor watered her plants humming along to music only she could hear. Normal Sunday stuff. But I felt miles away. What do you do when your own blood treats your sacrifice like spare change? When your presence is expected but your worth is optional? I didn't have an answer. Just a quiet ache behind my ribs. I went to the kitchen again. Not because I was hungry but because moving helped. I filled the kettle, set it on the stove. Watched the flame flicker blue then orange. Simple, reliable heat. Something I could count on. While I waited for the water to boil I opened the pantry. Checked the shelves. Canned beans, pasta, rice. Enough to last a while. Another kind of safety net. Smaller, quieter but still there. The kettle whistled low and steady. I poured the water over tea leaves, watched them swirl and bloom. Sat at the table, wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Let the heat seep into my skin. I thought about calling someone. An old friend maybe. But who do you tell this to? Hey, remember all those years I saved every penny? Well, someone just spent it all on centerpieces and champagne toasts. And they didn't even flinch. It wasn't theft, not legally. Just betrayal wrapped in family ties. And those are harder to name, let alone prove. I sipped the tea. Bitter at first, then smooth. Like most hard truths. The afternoon stretched long and slow. I cleaned the kitchen not because it needed it but because scrubbing counters gave my hands something to do. Washed dishes, wiped surfaces, folded towels. Small acts of order in a world that suddenly felt chaotic. I found a grocery list tucked in the fridge door. Written in his handwriting. Milk, eggs, bread. Items he'd pick up on his way home from work. Routine unchanged. Like nothing had shifted. But everything had. I sat on the back porch as the sun dipped lower. Watched shadows stretch across the yard. Remembered planting tomatoes here last spring. Digging holes, placing seedlings, patting soil gently around them. They grew strong, tall, full of fruit. Now the vines were dry, brittle. Season over. Maybe that's what this was. An ending. Not dramatic, not sudden, but final all the same. I didn't hate him. Not really. Hate takes energy and I was too tired for that. Just sad. Sad that love could be so one-sided. Sad that showing up every day didn't mean you mattered in the end. A breeze picked up rustling leaves. Cool against my skin. I closed my eyes, breathed deep. Smelled earth and dusk and distant rain. Somewhere inside the house the clock ticked. Marking time, moving forward. Whether I was ready or not. I thought about what came next. No grand plan, just small steps. Find a new bank, open a new account. Start again. Not with 23 years but with today. Today I still had this house. This porch. This breath in my lungs. Today I still had dignity. And maybe that was enough to begin. The sky turned pink then purple. Stars blinked awake one by one. I stayed outside until the air grew cool enough to raise goosebumps. Then I went in. Locked the door, turned off the lights. In the dark I whispered to myself. You're still here. And for now that counted for something. She didn't cry, didn't yell. Just sat by the window watching rain blur the street. Remember changing his diapers, walking him to school. Holding his hand through breakups and bad grades. Now my name wasn't even on the guest list. The rain kept falling steady and soft. Tapping the roof like it was trying to get my attention. I stayed still, arms wrapped around my knees. Chin resting on them. Watching water slide down the glass in crooked lines. Each drop leaving a trail then fading into the next. It felt like my whole life had been like that. Pouring out slowly unnoticed until there was nothing left to give. I thought about the first time I held him. Tiny wrinkled face scrunched up red from crying. So small I was scared to breathe too hard. But I held on anyway. Because that's what you do when someone depends on you. Years later I walked him to the bus stop. Backpack bigger than he was, lunchbox clinking with fruit and sandwiches. He'd turn at the corner, wave with one hand, the other clutching his favorite stuffed bear. I'd stand there until the bus disappeared around the bend. Then go back inside to an empty house and start the day. Through middle school, high school, college. I was always there. In the background, quiet, steady. Helping with projects, driving to games, sitting through late night talks about dreams and fears and everything in between. And now? Not even a mention. No invitation, no call, no explanation. Just a casual sentence over coffee like it was nothing. I got up finally, legs stiff from sitting too long. Walked to the closet, pulled out an old photo album. Dusty cover, faded edges. I sat on the floor, flipped it open. There we were. Birthday parties, beach trips, holidays. Me smiling, tired but happy. Him growing taller each page. From toddler to teen to adult. All those moments saved in paper and ink. I ran my fingers over the pictures. Not sad exactly, just wondering. When did I become invisible? Was it gradual or sudden? Did I miss the sign? A car passed outside, tires hissing on wet pavement. I looked up, saw headlights sweep across the wall. Then gone. I closed the album, put it back. Not because it hurt to look. But because memories shouldn't be weapons. They're meant to remind us of love, not loss. I went to the kitchen, filled the kettle again. Same routine, same motions. But this time I added honey to the tea. Something sweet to balance the bitterness. Sat at the table, watched steam rise, curl and vanish. Like all the things I never said. I thought about calling. Just to hear a voice. Any voice. But who would understand? Who would listen without judging or offering empty advice? Sometimes silence is kinder. I ate a piece of toast, plain, no butter, no jam. Just something to settle the hollow feeling in my chest. Chewed slowly, tasted nothing. The house felt different. Not smaller but emptier. Like the walls knew something had changed. I walked through each room. Living room, bedroom, bathroom. Touching things as I passed. Lampshade, curtain, edge, door frame. Grounding myself in the familiar. In the hallway I stopped at the mirror. Looked at my reflection. Same eyes, same lines, same tired smile. But something inside had shifted. I wasn't just the person who gave. I was also the person who lost. And that mattered. I turned away, went back to the window. Rain had slowed to a drizzle. Street lights glowed through the mist, casting long shadows. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. Running beside him holding the seat. Letting go when he didn't even notice. Watching him pedal away laughing free. I stood there breathless proud. Knowing he didn't need me to hold on anymore. But I stayed close anyway. Just in case. Now I wondered if he ever looked back. If he ever saw me standing there. Or if he just assumed I'd always be waiting. The phone buzzed again. Another update about the wedding. Dress fitting done. Flowers chosen. Guest list finalized. I didn't open it. Just let it sit face down on the counter. My place wasn't there. Not in the plans, not in the pictures, not in the future. And maybe that was okay. Maybe some people are only meant to walk part of the way. I made a list in my head. Not of what was taken. But of what was still mine. This house. These hands. This heart that still beat even when it ached. I had mornings with birdsong. Evenings with quiet. Books on the shelf. Tea in the cupboard. A bed that waited for me every night. Small things. But real. I went to bed early. Not because I was tired but because darkness felt safe. Pulled the blanket up, tucked it under my chin. Listened to the house settle around me. Outside the world kept turning. Cars passed, neighbors laughed, dogs barked. Life didn't stop just because mine felt stuck. And slowly, very slowly, I began to believe it wouldn't stay stuck forever. Because roots don't die just because they're not seen. They keep growing underground. Waiting for the right time to reach for the sun again. I closed my eyes. Let the sound of rain lull me to sleep. And for the first time in days, I dreamed of gardens, not graves. She's wife called later, voice soft like she was doing me a favor. It's just easier this way. We don't want drama on our big day. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Because love shouldn't cost a lifetime of silence. The phone rang just after dinner. Not his number but hers. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick it up. Maybe curiosity, maybe habit, maybe the quiet hope that someone would finally say they were sorry. Her voice was calm, polished, like she'd rehearsed it. Hi, I hope you don't mind me calling. We just wanted to make sure everything's clear about the wedding. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone pressed to my ear. Said nothing, let her fill the silence. Look, we really appreciate everything you've done over the years. But with all the planning and stress, it's just easier if we keep things simple. You understand, right? Easier. That word again. Like life was a math problem and I was the variable they could subtract without changing the answer. She kept talking. About timelines and vendors and guest count. About how important it was that the day go smoothly. No distractions, no tension, no uncomfortable moments. I listened. Not because I cared about napkin colors or floral arrangements. But because I wanted to hear if there was even a flicker of guilt in her voice. There wasn't. Just polite detachment. Like I was a distant relative who'd sent a gift once. Not someone who'd stayed up nights worrying. Who'd driven through snowstorms for school plays. Who'd saved every spare dollar just in case. When she paused, I finally spoke. Softly so she wouldn't mistake it for anger. I'm not asking to be center stage. I just wanted to be there. A beat of silence. Then. It's not personal. It's just what works best for us. I closed my eyes. Felt the weight of those words settle in my chest. Not personal. As if erasing someone's presence could ever be impersonal. I thought about all the times I stepped back. Let him take the spotlight. Let his joy be louder than my quiet support. I never asked for thanks. Never expected a parade. Just a place at the table. But even that was too much. Okay, I said. Because what else was there? She thanked me like I'd agreed to something generous. Like I'd given her a gift instead of swallowing another loss. The call ended. Phone went dark in my hand. I sat there for a long time. Listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the clock. The ordinary sounds of a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. I got up, walked to the kitchen. Filled a glass with water. Drank it slow. Let the coolness ground me. Then I went to the closet. Pulled out a box labeled winter clothes. Emptied it onto the bed. Folded each sweater, each scarf with care. Not because I needed to, but because folding gave my hands purpose. I thought about the first time I met her. Polite smile, firm handshake. She asked about my garden. I told her about the tomatoes. She nodded like she cared. But her eyes kept drifting to her phone. Even then I think I knew. I wasn't part of their story. Just background scenery. And now they were editing me out completely. I sat on the bed surrounded by folded clothes. Watched dust motes float in the late afternoon light. Thought about how easy it is to disappear from someone else's life. When they stop looking for you. But I hadn't vanished. I was still here. Still breathing. Still showing up for myself even when no one else did. I stood, brushed off my pants. Walked to the window. The sun was low, casting long golden shadows across the yard. A neighbor walked her dog, waving as she passed. I waved back. Small connection but real. I went to the kitchen, started dinner. Chopped onions, carrots, potatoes. Simple stew, nothing fancy. But it would warm the house, fill the air with something honest. While it simmered, I sat at the table. Pulled out a notebook, old one with frayed edges. Opened to a blank page. Didn't write anything at first. Just let the pen rest in my hand. Then slowly I wrote. Today I chose peace over pain. Not because what happened was okay. But because I refused to let it live rent-free in my head. Love shouldn't cost your dignity. Shouldn't demand silence in exchange for a seed. Shouldn't ask you to disappear so others can shine. Real love makes space. And if there's no room for you, then it was never really love. I closed the notebook. Placed it back in the drawer. Dinner was ready. Steam rose from the pot, filling the kitchen with warmth. I served a bowl. Sat alone at the table. Ate slowly, savoring each bite. Outside the sky turned pink, then purple. Stars blinked awake one by one. I washed the dishes, dried them, put them away. Then I went to the porch. Sat in the old rocking chair. Listened to crickets, frogs, distant traffic. The world didn't end. The earth didn't crack open. Life went on. And so would I. Not bitter. Not broken. Just clear. Because sometimes the deepest cuts come wrapped in kindness. And the hardest goodbyes wear smiles. But I was learning to recognize both. And protect myself from either. I rocked gently back and forth. Breathing in the night air. Cool, clean, quiet. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like freedom. Not loud or flashy. Just steady. Like roots finding new soil. After being pulled up the next morning, I opened a new bank account. First deposit was my dignity. Second was peace. And when their wedding photos popped up online, I scrolled past without stopping. Because some roots grow stronger when they're cut. Sunlight came through the blinds soft and golden. No alarm needed. My body just knew it was time to rise. I made the bed, smoothed the sheets, tucked the corners like always. Then stood in the middle of the room for a moment. Breathing. Something felt different. Not lighter exactly, but clearer. Like fog had lifted and I could finally see the path ahead. I showered, dressed in clean clothes. Poured coffee into my favorite mug. The one with the chipped handle I never threw away. Sat at the table, watched steam curl into the air. Today wasn't about them. It was about me. After breakfast I walked to the bank. Not the old one where 23 years of savings vanished. A new branch on the other side of town. Glass doors, automatic lights, bright and clean. The teller smiled, asked how she could help. I said I'd like to open an account. She handed me forms. I filled them out slowly, carefully. Name, address, phone number. All mine. When she asked for the initial deposit, I pulled out the envelope from my pocket. Bills folded neat, small amount but mine. Earned this week cleaning houses, helping neighbors, walking dogs. Cash that came with no strings. She counted it, nodded. Your account is active. Welcome. I left the bank with a small slip of paper. New account number, new beginning. On the way home I stopped at the market. Bought seeds, tomatoes, basil, marigolds. The kind that bloom even in rough soil. Back in the yard I turned over the earth. Dug small holes, spaced them out. Pressed each seed gently into the ground. Covered them, patted the soil like tucking in a child. Watered them slow, steady. Watched the dirt darken under the stream. This garden wouldn't be for anyone else. No sharing, no giving away. Just mine to tend, to watch, grow, enjoy. Later that afternoon my phone buzzed. A notification from a social feed. Wedding photos. Smiling faces, white dress, arches, flowers everywhere. Champagne glasses raised to the sky. I didn't click. Didn't zoom in. Just let the image sit in my feed for a second. Then scrolled past. No anger, no sadness. Just quiet acknowledgement. That life wasn't mine anymore. And that was okay. I went inside, made tea. Sat on the porch with my notebook. Wrote down 3 things I was grateful for. Sunshine, fresh soil, quiet mornings. Small things. But real. As the days passed I fell into a new rhythm. Mornings with coffee and birdsong. Afternoons in the garden pulling weeds, checking sprouts. Evenings with books or walks around the block. I started saying yes to things I used to skip. Coffee with a neighbor who lost her husband too. A community art class at the library. Volunteering at the animal shelter on Saturdays. Not because I was trying to fill a hole. But because I remembered I liked people. Liked connection. Just not the kind that asked me to disappear. One evening I found an old sweater in the back of the closet. His favorite one he'd left behind years ago. Gray, soft, worn at the elbows. I held it for a moment. Then folded it neatly and put it in a donation bag. Not out of spite. Just space. My closet, my home, my heart. All needed room to breathe. I began cooking new recipes. Trying flavors I'd never used before. Turmeric, cumin, smoked paprika. Spices that made the kitchen smell alive. Ate alone sometimes. But never lonely. Because I was learning to be good company. Weeks turned into months. The garden grew tall, strong. Tomatoes heavy on the vine. Basil fragrant marigolds bright orange against green leaves. I picked what I needed. Shared the rest with neighbors. One day a woman from down the street stopped by. Said your yard looks like a painting. Can I sit with you a while? We sat on the porch, drank lemonade. Talked about nothing important. Weather books, the stray cat that kept visiting her porch. And in that simple conversation, I felt something return. Not the past, but possibility. I still thought about him sometimes. Not with bitterness but with curiosity. Wondering if he ever looked at his own reflection and saw what he'd lost. But I didn't wait for an answer. Because my story wasn't tied to his anymore. I watered the plants every morning. Watched bees hover over blossoms. Listened to wind rustle through leaves. Learned that healing isn't loud. It's quiet. Like seeds pushing through dirt. Like roots spreading deep even when no one sees. One night I dreamed of a tree. Tall wide branches reaching in every direction. Roots deep, strong, unshaken. When I woke I knew. That was me. Not perfect. Not untouched. But standing. And that was enough. So when the next wedding invitation came. Not there's someone else's. I didn't flinch. I RSVP'd. Bought a simple dress. Wrapped a gift with care. Not because I needed to prove anything. But because joy doesn't have to be earned. It can just be shared. And this time, I'd be there for myself. Not as background. Not as sacrifice. But as guest. As human. As whole. The day of the wedding I wore the dress. Walked in head high. Smiled at strangers. Danced once under string lights. And when someone asked if I was family, I said, I'm me. And that was enough. Because some roots grow stronger when they're cut. Not because they forget. But because they finally learn. They were never meant to hold someone else up. They were meant to stand on their own. And reach for the sun. They don't scream. They just grow elsewhere.